Hello, welcome to the Madison Podcast, episode number, I have no idea. My name is Ben Lavender, New York's favorite British mortgage broker. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Rahman. Do you pronounce it Rahman or Rahman?
You know, I'm name fluid. I'm name fluid. Whatever my clients want to roll with, I'll go with that.
Well, what do you prefer?
I really don't have a preference. So Rahman, Raymond,
Raymond. I've never heard Raymond.
Some people.
That's a very Americanized version.
It's come out a lot of times, but you know what? I just roll with the punches. Most of the time, they'll say, "Hey, Mohammed, you can call me Mo."
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you know how many Mohammed Rahman clients I have?
I'm sure more than 10.
Yes.
I know more than 10 for sure.
Literally.
It's a very common name.
But not that I've pre-approved of that everything quiet. I mean, actually closed. Yeah. I think 13.
I probably know about 12 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have been one of them.
I could have been. Yeah. I never know.
So Mo, tell the people, please, who you are, what you do.
Of course.
Obviously I know, but go ahead.
Of course. I'm a real estate investor and a realtor based out of New York. I started investing in real estate back in 2019, and once I rented out my first unit, I was like, "This is what I want to be doing. I know I want to be in real estate." It was like,
all right, Mo, so I'm going to stop you right there.
Go for it.
So, how did you get to that point? Because the reason why I say that is because people will listen, and because that's their end goal is to get a unit,
that point,
right? Whether it's single or multi.
Sure.
Right. So how did you go from wherever you were to that point?
Yeah, man. I'm a pretty boring, frugal guy too. So I worked in, I've worked in corporate, startup, software, tech sales for almost 10 years before I got to that point.
That's not boring. That's exciting.
It's exciting. Yeah, sure, it's exciting. But I always knew hey, this isn't what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I always felt like there was some kind of bigger calling in place. And I, honestly, even going into real estate, I never felt like it was my calling. I know I had a bunch of money saved up because I'm a frugal guy. I don't really spend too much. And I was like, I don't want to put in the stock market because I don't think I'm smart enough for that. Real estate, sure, why not? So started looking at properties, started looking at numbers, and even after I closed, I still didn't feel that spark, right? It was only after I had started interviewing tenants for the property actually, and I told my agent at the time, I told him, hey, I have very strict criteria about who I want in terms of credit, income, things like that, and he ends up sending over someone a file that was like, hey, the numbers are okay on this one, but his credit's not where it needs to be. I think you should at least talk to him. And I still remember it because it was a Friday, and I was like, I finished work early. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I have time. Why not? I have time to kill. Let me talk to the guy. I ended up speaking with him for an hour, right? And he was telling me about how he had recently immigrated to the country, and I could relate because I come from a family of immigrants, and he has the work ethic, but his credit score wasn't where it needed to be because he doesn't have the credit history. So he's like, I have the work, I have the work record, the income record, but my credit is not where it needs to be, and that's limiting how the access to housing that I have. And he was talking to me about how he had 2 girls, and because of his credit, they weren't able to go to good school districts or anything like that. And then while I was having this call, man, the light bulb was going off in my head. I'm like, here we have a subset of the population that works incredibly hard, right? And if you're familiar with the immigration process coming to the U.S., if you do it well, if you do everything legally, 7 to 10 years if you're doing everything properly. So you need to be organized for something like that. So if people are coming over legally and they're not coming here to just be on the dole, they're coming here to work. Their credit shouldn't be limiting them, right? And in my head, I was like, hey, this is a subset of the population that has great work ethic. And if credit is the only thing that's limiting them, then that's what I want to be able to help them with, right? And that was that's what sparked the real passion about real estate. And I knew from that point, I was like, there's no way I can be doing anything else.
You found an element of it that was fulfilling.
Exactly.
Right? It wasn't just a money thing. It's
absolutely.
This is someone that you can help.
Yep.
You have the ability to help, even though it's not in your criteria, but it's a good candidate.
It's a good candidate, and I'm still turning a profit. That's the best part. It's hey, you can do good in the world, and you can still make money. And from that point, I was like, whatever I'm doing, it's got to be working towards this. So after that, I had switched jobs because I know I still wanted to have a W-2. So I switched to a real estate fund in Midtown that I was like, hey, you know what? I know eventually I want to be able to have a lot of properties. Let me see how the big boys are sort of doing it. And I worked for one of those evil companies that was buying up a lot of single family and 2-family homes. Not going to mention any names. And it took me about a year to find.
Take a look at your LinkedIn in an hour.
No, I've scrubbed it. I've scrubbed it. But I finally got a chance to sit down with the underwriting acquisitions team just to get an understanding of what was going on underneath the hood. What was our criteria when we were acquiring properties, and the formulas were the same. The methodology was the same. The criteria may have been a little bit different in terms of what's a pass, what's a fail, But the only thing that was different was the numbers had more zeros on it. And I was like, you know what? That's it. These guys are not doing anything different. No one else is doing anything different. Why can I not do this for myself? So I quit. I still had a little bit of money saved up, and I was like, let me start from the ground up. Got my real estate license. Knock on wood, went, so far is going well. And I know for me, the long-term goal is to, make the connections here, network with people, obviously make some money from brokering transactions too, and learn a lot as well. And then eventually start, my own company and start my own fund, and hopefully, keep buying properties. That's the end goal.
How long do you think till you get there?
Every time I put a timeline for myself, every time I don't hit it, I always go into a spiral. So I told myself I'm not going to put a timeline. It's when it starts to feel right. And right now, even though the market conditions aren't favorable to a lot of new people, it still feels right, because every single day I end up meeting someone or I end up learning something that I'm like, oh, this could be very useful. And it's one of those things that I think day to day is really difficult, but when like you look back at your life 5 years ago and you're like, oh, those things happened to get me to where I am now, And that's the sort of the perspective I'm looking at things from, a little bit of
I can relate very well. Yeah, every
forward
experience
hindsight
that you go through, every single, like just literally everything that you do. So like I actually talk about this quite a bit with people, and it's not necessarily just like a business philosophy. It's more of like a life philosophy that the more things that you do, the more new experiences that you gather, the more different types of people that you meet and just scenarios that you put yourself in, it makes you a sharper individual, right? And which mostly will translate to business, but you can translate that to your relationships, whether it's with friends, family, your loved ones, it all comes together and it can propel you to another place that you don't even expect.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't seem to realize, and I definitely didn't realize this until I went through the journey that I'm still going through, is we're social creatures, right?
Yeah.
And every business to business is a group of people trying to solve a problem and maybe get paid for it too. So understanding that, I think inherently is incredibly important, and always being open to new experiences and open to conversations. It's helped me a lot too, because at the end of the day, we're social creatures. We all have a little bit of ego behind us, but every single day I'm sort of like, hey, let me try and do my best to leave my ego at the door to see what can I learn from this person that maybe I didn't know before.
Yeah, you can't pick anything up if your cup's completely full.
You're like,
right?
oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, and that's it. I don't need to be doing anything else. Then you're too much in your own comfort zone, and I find I fall victim to that as well, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's always being mindful and keeping the right people around you that will not just encourage you but also push you when they see you being too comfortable in your comfort zone.
Yeah, and as they say, like you can't be at the top of the food chain in your circle. You just can't, right?
I don't want to do that, dude.
Yeah, you got nothing to chase. It's not like, look, I'll also say this, because that sometimes there are people that, let's say, you have someone that produces more than you, right? But the way they do it isn't the way that you want to do it, right? So I think it's also about finding like those people who are successful, not just like from a monetary or like production perspective, but like a lifestyle perspective.
Absolutely.
Which for me has actually been my kind of focus the past, I'd say, 2 years, right? Because like generating heavy business is great, it's fantastic, but not if you're working 14 hours a day, you exhaust yourself, right? It's like there has to be some type of a balance.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think over time, you recalibrate, you figure that out, and you get to a place where you've hit all heads, but it's not easy to find that. And sometimes we have to go kind of like outside of our comfort zone or outside of our circle. So for instance, like I have a coach. I have a coach, shout out to Kai. I think I've shouted out Kai a couple times on here. And a lot of the people in the group, they don't just produce more than me, some of them do. But they also live like very comfortable lifestyles, given that a lot of them are not, actually none of them are in New York. It's a different animal here.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And more relaxed places, people just stop working at 4. Right? It's nice, but it's not like that here.
Of course.
But again, it gives you something to chase. Like there's more, because the way that real estate business is done in New York, I find, is very different to other states. So for instance, like when I do business in Florida, I do quite a bit because you got a lot of people back and forth, right? So like agents are shocked when I text them I'm not even talking about late, like 9. They're shocked when I text them at like 5:30, right? Because like most people are just relaxed. They're done. It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock. It's done.
Yeah, it's like let's go to the beach. Like,
Whereas
right? So
here it's like, hey, if I'm calling at 8 o'clock, Ben, I need an answer. Like,
right.
Tell me what's going on in this deal.
But they're not calling us either. It's just it's really, really different. Look, I always say that New York deals probably take 2 to 3 times as much work as any deal out of state, right?
Interesting.
For 2 reasons. Because to go from an accepted offer to a contract signing is an entire process with us. With them, it's a signature.
Yep.
And our deals take longer to close because that's the way that our contracts are set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like, and I haven't done any deal outside of New York State, but I know, like, in other states, or even actually upstate New York, agents are responsible for the contract work itself, like drafting the contract or having a template and then sending it over. And then there's like a cooling period or something with the attorneys for like 3 days. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. There's also, going back to the point that you had mentioned about keeping the right people around you, you know, it's crucial because you want to be around people that will be able to push you in the right direction. And one thing I've found is when you're around the right group of people, you won't be able to know necessarily right away, but you yourself will change in a way where the conversations and the interactions you'll have with other people are a lot more genuine at the end of the day, right? So I'm at that stage now where, don't get me wrong, I don't turn away business, but I'm at that stage where if I'm speaking with a new client or I'm having a buyer consultation with someone, for example, I can start to get a sense whether or not I'm going to get along with this person, regardless of how, you know, how likely, you know, how high the likelihood to close or anything else would be. I can really start to get a better understanding of, hey, am I going to vibe with this person? Is my style well suited for them? I'm not at that stage yet where I'm going to turn away business, but I do see myself slowly getting there probably in the next 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, so I'm at that stage.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And well, look, I've also been doing this for a little bit over 10 years. It's different, right? So I wouldn't say it's necessarily about turning away. Like the vibe thing is key, but it's also like a communication thing. You know, what's their style of communication? Is this person gonna call me at 9:30 to ask me like a question about their pay stub, right? And it's got nothing to do with, because it's different, Mo. Let's say hypothetically, like a client calls me at 9:30 because they have a question on what their interest rate is or what their payment is. That's very different, right? Because it's like, because what happens, I know from a buyer's perspective, is that they're sitting in bed worried and anxious about this.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't mind answering a question about that, but like if someone hits me up about at 9:30 in the evening about a document, to me that isn't one, like an anxiety thing where they need to be calmed down, and then 2, it shows me that they are comfortable disrespecting me.
Absolutely.
Right, so it's basically like you teach people how you want to be treated, right? So by answering the phone at 9:30 to, you know, answer a question about a pay stub that
you're training
makes
them.
no difference. You're basically telling them that it's okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So again, depends on what it is. It's got to be the right scenario, but that's fine. But I'm not of the belief of like grind. Right, in the beginning of your career, you have to build your career up, but after a while, you have to be more efficient. So the point that I was actually trying to get to, Mo, is that what happens is when you have a lot of business over time, you can only scale by being your most natural self. Right, because if you're trying to be someone else, it's physically exhausting, and then on top of it, let's say you take on a bunch of clients that aren't suited to your personality, and
it's no bueno.
Yeah.
Your from what I've heard, like this goes back to like having worked with clients like that, and you know, I realized this after, you know, failing a couple of times, was your reputation is incredibly important, right? So if you can't be your true self, going back to what you had mentioned, right? You can't give the best experience that you want to give, that you're used to giving, because that style or that communication style, that vibe just isn't there. At the end of the day, you're hurting yourself, your long-term goals, right? If you don't give a good experience to the client because your vibes aren't fitting well, you know, they're not going to turn around and recommend you to everyone. That's not going to happen. It'll be the complete opposite thing. So you end up hurting yourself just because you want to, you know, score a couple of bucks. Again, I'm not there yet. So if anyone's watching this thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk to him, I'm not there yet, but please, let's have a consultation. I don't charge anything for it, and we can figure it out.
So just to piggyback on that, a part of it, let's say that hypothetically, from a production standpoint, you can only close 5 deals a month by yourself, without help, without an admin, whatever. Right, hypothetically, right? But you take on 2 clients that aren't suited to your personality type, it's the same amount of work as if you were doing 5.
That's fair.
Right?
That's a good
which is how I look at it, right? If I'm talking to this client who wants things that I can't deliver them, or that just don't exist, and then on top of it, they're disrespectful and demand, you know. So and that's another thing, right? We don't want to like be perfect because
absolutely.
people expect perfect. But it's from an efficiency standpoint, you actually do less business. So everyone loses. The client loses because they're not having whatever they wanted, right?
Yeah.
And then we lose as well because we can't be as efficient as possible and help the people that are more suited to our personality style.
Yeah, and your existing clients also suffer because now you can't give them the attention that they thought they were going to be getting, right?
Yeah.
So it hurts everyone on all sides. It's interesting.
So let's pivot away from real estate. This is a question that I ask literally everyone.
Sure.
And it's really simple, but name 3 things that you're grateful for.
That I'm grateful for: my health, my family's health. The list can keep going on. Roof over our heads, food. Not worried about.
We're at 4.
Well, I'm sorry?
We're at 4.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sort of rambling here, but I try to express gratitude and humility whenever I can.
Yeah, I think it helps.
It definitely helps.
It's been a focus of mine as well, especially look in a business, because this business is stressful, especially in the beginning. I mean, truth be told, the stress never goes away. There's always
I can
something.
imagine.
Yeah,
you get better. You get better at managing it.
You do, because you come across scenarios, like there are scenarios that I saw 7 years ago that would freak me out and I'd lose sleep over. And now I'm just like, yeah, this is easy. You just do this. So, but that happens. But still, I always say that real estate is the epitome of Murphy's Law, that something will go wrong.
If it can go wrong,
And it's all about just like how we react to it. But what I was getting at is that if we maintain that attitude of gratitude, it rhymed. It's not like I personally don't practice it again because it's some hippie like kumbaya.
Sure.
I'm such a good person that I'm
I know,
grateful.
you're so much better than me.
Yeah, exactly. Because truth be told, like a lot of people are like that, right?
Yeah,
like
of
I want to
course.
just express my gratitude.
It's a signal. It's a signal.
Yeah, but the thing is, it comes across as fake
Of
anyway.
course.
We will see it from a mile
Yeah,
away. But what it does is that if you approach this business with that, the business itself is less exhausting. I think it's so mental, this business, and it's like treat it like you're training as an athlete for a competition, right? It's all mental. Yes, the physical is important, but like what puts you in your sharpest frame of mind? How do you put yourself there? How do you keep yourself there? Protect yourself from getting out of it. And we all get out of it, right? That's how like we get into a slump.
Absolutely.
Right? So and it's like we need a little kick to get us out. But like, do you have a way to get back in? For me, it's very simple. If I'm consistently going to the gym, I feel good. Like I took a week off because I have a bad shoulder. I had 2 surgeries on my left shoulder.
Oof.
So I tweaked it a little bit a couple weeks ago, and I took the week off the gym, right?
Good.
And I noticed last week, I wasn't like down or anything, but I wasn't as,
No, I can completely relate to that. I don't get a chance to talk about this in a lot of real estate stuff, but I used to, you might not notice it looking at me now, but at my heaviest, I stopped weighing myself when I hit like 360 pounds. It's like 150 kilograms. That's when I stopped weighing myself.
This was 360
pounds, yeah.
Holy
When I stopped weighing myself. That's when I stopped, and then there was like several months where I just sort of binge eating, stuff like that. It got worse.
Gotcha.
But eventually, started working out, eating healthy, and you're right, like physical health is probably the most important thing I think a lot of people sort of overlook. If you don't have your physical health, you have nothing else, right? Because physical and the mental are tied together. And there's just saying, rich man wants 1,000 things, a sick man just wants one thing. He doesn't want to be sick anymore.
Yep.
So for me, like physical health is important. That ties into mental health too. I know if I don't like work out or run for a couple of days, I'm agitated because I feel like I have this energy and I need to exert it somewhere. I will say the one thing that I've also been discovering going back to gratitude is like spiritual health too, So it's like, taking the time to maybe meditate once or twice a month. I'll try and intentionally do that. For me, lately it's also been just trying to have some kind of a spiritual connection, maybe praying a little bit more too, just to remind myself that no matter how bad it gets, and don't let anyone fool you. There is blood on the streets right now. Perseverance and time will tell a lot of things. Sorry if I'm rambling. But
no, that's great. So I mean, to your point, I had a follow-up question. Don't answer it yet, but I want to know the story of like, how did you get heavy? How did you lose the weight? What made you? I want to get to that. But
of course,
what I wanted to, because I don't talk about spiritual stuff too much here. I'm not religious. I would say I'm traditional.
Fine. Yeah.
I still like high holidays, blah, blah, like all that stuff. But I think like what's really nice about it is that it's stress relieving.
Yes. Cathartic. It's very cathartic.
Yeah, because like reminds you that the world or the universe or whatever, it's bigger than you. We're just nothing. We're just like these. I wouldn't say nothing, right? But like in comparison, it's like there are so many other problems that like we're worried about this little thing. It's just kind of like, why am I worried about this? You know. But yes, please tell us about like how you gained the weight and like.
I mean,
if you want to, of course.
Of course. That's. I mean, I'll talk about it. So I mean, this was like I was always a big kid, right? Always like pretty heavy. Through middle school, high school, and then college, it got really bad. It was like, I think my junior or senior year in college where, this is going to sound so silly, but I was walking back to my car from one of my evening classes on campus. And then, I don't know, I had this kind of realization. I was like, hey, if girls are allowed to like want, if I'm allowed to like want someone that is like physically fit and attractive, then girls should be allowed to want me like that too. Like that's a fair trade. Like if I want someone that's like physically fit and attractive and like, in the right headspace, then they should be allowed to want that too. And
like in you.
Yeah, in me.
Yeah,
right?
Course,
absolutely.
Man.
Come on.
Yeah, for you to be 300 pounds and be like, you have to be in phenomenal. I mean, that's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurd for me to be like almost 400 pounds and saying, oh, I want someone that's physically fit. And that's and then I was like, and then in my head, I'm like, wait a second, that the flip works too. So that's when it started. There was no like, big realization or anything. It was very superficial. I just want to be nice and attractive while I'm still young. And, I feel like that was the key moment in my life because, I mean, I'm sure like you work out, so you understand like a lot, like 99% of things are mental, right? Like your body, like when you feel like your body's at 20%, you're actually at 80% still, so you can still keep pushing through. And that has carried me,
David Goggins.
I have no idea. I think so, maybe, because I remember binging a lot of.
He says 40%. It's like when you think you're at 40%,
you still have a lot of juice.
When you think you're at 100%, you're really at 40%. Is what he says.
There you go. But that has carried over into so many different things. Every single thing I try to do, it's always been like, okay, have I exhausted every single possibility? And a lot of my clients will like attest to this too. I don't like giving up. I really don't like. I'm very stubborn, and oftentimes it's led to trouble, like in terms of like maybe butting heads with not the right people. But that's the kind of mentality I bring to every single interaction that I do. And for me, it's not like, oh, I gotta know. It's always like, okay, how many no's do I need until I get to a yes? It's never a oh, I can't do this. Why can't I do this? It's always a, how can I do this? How can I jump across this wall? How can I do this? And when you start
solutions,
solutions. It's very solution orientated because it's like. Nothing is rocket science, man. Like this is real estate. It's not brain surgery. Like there's no, and like I tell my family and anyone that'll listen to this, there's no question you can ask that hasn't already been asked and that Google doesn't have an answer for. Yeah. So your responsibility is just to find that answer. So why is that so difficult? Google it, figure it out, talk to the right people. And it's like, it's having conversations like this, that you can tap into other people's networks. And, shout out to my broker, Rahman, who's been super helpful in guiding my energy into the right places to, hopefully be successful in a few years.
You will. You definitely will.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
You have the right mindset. Look, I also think like real estate, a lot of it is consistency. But we do have to like work on getting better every day. I mean, look, absolutely. I know. So you came into the business saying, I'm going to do sales because I enjoy sales. I enjoy helping people. But the end goal for your own perspective is to build a fund and
absolutely.
Right. So I find that, I meet a lot of agents. They don't have a plan. They're just like, I want to sell some homes and pay my bills. Right. So in terms of goals, everyone is entitled to their own goals. I'm not judging them for not having high hopes, but what it does, because it changes everything that you do, right? Because if you have a specific goal, given that you don't have an exact time period, but if you have that end goal in mind, it changes all your behaviors.
Absolutely.
Right? Whereas like if someone just wants to sell some homes here and there as a hobby, it's just like, okay, that's what's going to happen.
100%. I couldn't I can't remember who I was talking to this about, but going back to like approaching every single interaction with that mindset, you look at things from a different perspective. You're never looking at things as like a very short term, I just want to close this deal and move on to the next one. You're always like, okay, what can I learn from this that I can possibly apply later on? What can I have from this conversation with Ben that maybe in a couple of years, if we stay in touch, we might be able to work something out mutually that's beneficial for both of us. And I think for me, I enjoy working with others that are like that too, because then you're working for a greater good. And when you're working for a greater good, you understand, okay, I shouldn't give this guy such a hard time just because his offer came out this way or this way or that way. Like let's figure out a way to like work together, maybe mutually compromise on something and then move on. But I 100% agree. And I think it goes back to like a lot of the content you do is great. And it's the same mindset that like applies to me too, which is like, I know I'm in it for the long term, and I know I want to create the content that people will actually find useful and helpful, because right now it might not, let's say, generate thousands and thousands of leads that I would like, but I know, it helps. It keeps me sticky, it keeps me relevant, just like I'm sure it does to you as well. And every single conversation takes you another, takes you another, takes you another. So I'm just the guy that's like, I'm happy with knocking on the doors right now. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what you were saying about like the content and staying relevant.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's tremendously underrated, right? So for me, I don't know the exact number, but I make very, very, very few outbound phone calls. And that's the way that I want it, right? Because it's like if I need something from someone, typically I'll send them a voice note. I won't like pretend to care how their day is and all this stuff. Like I'm just very like professional, efficient. And I want to bring people to me, right, as opposed to me reaching out to them. So that's the thing with content, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, what's the point of me doing social media because I'm not going to build up 500,000 followers and generate 10,000 leads a day. What it does do is that it allows you to stay in front of your sphere and remind them what you do without annoying them and pitching them. By just providing value and presenting information, you tell people that this is what you do and you remind them. So that's like the real appeal of it, and it's absolutely it's fantastic. It makes life so much easier. But some people still don't want to do it, which I understand, because people have their it's camera, I sound funny, I look funny, but that's to everyone. Did you have an issue with the camera?
I mean, I think initially, so if you like scroll through like all my content feed, you'll see initially like it was very low, but like going back to like what we had spoken about before we started recording, it's a muscle, it's something that like you have to work on, just like with anything else. And I think I was a little bit uncomfortable at first, but I was like, this doesn't cost me anything except my time, and people are going to watch this. I'm like, once you put out a piece of content, that's there. And like the analogy like I heard was it's like a little soldier. Like you just put out a video and like you chop it up and you cut it up into bits and pieces. It's out there now and people are going to see it, and then that soldier's going to bring someone back eventually, right? And like the more soldiers you have, the bigger and bigger your sphere is.
I never heard that analogy before. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's good. And like people that knock on social media, I mean, fine, more for me, whatever.
I mean, look, I don't think anyone, as they say, and I've even made videos about this myself, no one will criticize you that produces more than you or has more experience than you, right? They would just encourage you. So anytime there's someone who's like, I rarely get haters on my videos. I don't know about you.
No, not yet. I'm not at that point yet, but eventually one day maybe I'll be there.
What you will get, I'll tell you what you will get. And I only know that this occurs because I haven't experienced it with myself, but I've heard about it from other people in the industry, is that when you start doing content, like people that produce less than you but know you personally are going to be like, he thinks he's a big shot now.
Oh, okay.
But that's just their own projection.
It's like an insecurity projection, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Comes with the territory that we do,
Yeah, there's nothing you could do about it. But which is why I always say just be who you're going to be, and if they come to you, they come to you.
Yeah.
So Mo, that's all we got time for today. Honestly, I could talk to you for another hour.
Yeah, of course.
So we'll have to have you back. Final thoughts, wisdom, where can people reach you? Give them everything.
Of course. Everything is online. My online handles are closed by Mo. Just Google it. You'll find me.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Well, Rahman,
Thanks for having me, man. Pleasure.